Okay, guys, I'm going to start, and they'll get here when they get here. I got to do this because the live streaming thing. So let's get the right book out here. All right. So we're in the Nevertheless I Live. We're in chapter 3. Bill, I got to teach, okay, buddy? So we're in chapter 3. We're on the second dedication, and we talked about dedicating our bodies to God. And we went through the whole thing, being a living sacrifice, being a willing sacrifice, what a sacrifice is. It has to cost you something. A sacrifice that doesn't cost you anything is not a sacrifice. It has to be acceptable to God. That was something I never really thought about before. Why would you try to give God something that's not acceptable to him? That's ridiculous. I mean, you wouldn't do that for a person. If you knew a person didn't like something, you wouldn't try to give it to them. You give them something that they want as a gift, a sacrifice, whatever. And it has to cost you something. And so we're down to the second dedication, which is dedicating our minds to God. And the verse is Romans 12:1 and 12:2. It says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And I've never liked those two words, reasonable service. Okay, because to me, I'm giving myself my whole body to God. I'm like, whoa, you should say, that's an awesome thing. And God says, no, that's reasonable. And one of the things that Brother Kernan said as I was reading things in here and studying it out is he says reasonable service also means it's what a reasonable person would do because of what Christ has done. And you start looking at what Christ has done, that reasonable gets up pretty high because he did a lot. So he expects a lot in return, and he deserves it. So the second verse there says, be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is the good, acceptable, and perfect will of God. So we're going to take that second part first. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. We talked about this a little bit last week. I'll just review this quickly for me. Transform is a change in form. To transform is a change in form. And to renew is to revive or to reawaken. So that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. So what we're talking about here is renewing our mind. That verse is saying renewing our mind is a process of giving our thought life over to God. It's renewing our thought life. As I was working through this, and I'll probably get here again and repeat myself, but I'm going to do it anyway. Where did we start with? Giving our what to God? At the first part of the verse. Our bodies. Okay, after our bodies, now we give our mind. And I started thinking about it. When I'll just go with what I got because I know I wrote this down. Something I'd never thought about before. Our thoughts need to be renewed because we have been living with our thoughts all of our life until we got saved. We were our natural self. Those were our thoughts. We trained those thoughts. We thought those thoughts. That's what's in our mind. And at salvation, we became a new creature. Behold, all things are passed away. All things are become new. We're a new creature. Brother Rosser did this. He says, Adam and Eve, three-part humans, a body, soul, and spirit. And when they sinned, their spirit died. Every man since then has been born broken, crippled. Every man, every woman. And when we get saved, we are renewed. Our spirit comes back. We become whole. But it's a baby. As far as spiritualness, we're a baby. We don't know anything about it. We're brand new. Right. So when we get saved, if you think about a baby, what's the first thing a baby does? It learns to crawl. It learns to walk. It learns to form words. It learns to see things and recognize. It learns to hear and understand. That's body. Their body is being taken care of. And as they get older, this little one here, as they get older and increases in age, what's next? The mind. They start putting things together. They start reasoning. They start becoming intelligent. So as a Christian, when we get saved, we start with our body. Because that's where a baby starts. We start learning how to walk, how to talk. We learn to see with God's eyes. I talked about that. Hear with God's ears. And watch this. We have to learn this stuff. And as we mature as a Christian, the next thing that needs to happen is we need to learn how to think as a Christian. We've got the body stuff down. It's like the little baby learning to walk. And next, learning to speak words. And then the thought process comes. And when they just take up a conversation with you, you're like, whoa, right? It's not just mama or blue or bird, okay, because that was Tyler's first word. It's thoughts. It's a process. It's rational. It's reasoning. So that's what's going on next. As a new Christian, we need to learn to think God thoughts. We need to learn to have, we need to begin to have the mind of Christ. 1 Corinthians 2:16, for who hath known the mind of the Lord, that he may instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ. That's a pretty awesome thing to have. Now, it's not like when we get saved, boom, we have the mind of Christ. That's not the way it works. We're a baby. We need to grow. We need to mature. As we do that, we learn. Babies learn to reason. They learn how to manipulate language. They learn what those words mean and the concepts. That's what makes us different than animals. One of the things is we have the ability to reason out a problem. Now, some animals have some reasoning abilities, and I'm not saying it's a strict cutoff and thing, but the intelligence thing is able to formulate. There's a thing called the Turing test. Probably said that wrong. Turing. It's a guy's name. He made a test. So if we met an alien, okay, we're going on a Star Trek voyage, and we go to that one planet that has the silicon-based life. They're rocks that are intelligent. You know, it's Star Trek. They can do anything they want. Well, so Kirk and Spock are walking along, and here's this rock. And they're like, oh, look, it's a rock. And he burns it, and bad things happen because it's alive. And one of them, McCoy or somebody says, wait a minute. That rock is alive. It's an intelligent. But how do you get there? You understand what I'm saying? How do you make that leap? That's intelligence. Well, it's a process in the mind. It's our thoughts. Okay, and I'm not trying to get into anything weird here. It just was fun and it came to me. It is pretty weird. But if you think about, yes, but not language as we understand it. It's more like a mind-to-mind thing with Spock. He does this, anyway. But anyway, it's. I'm not saying any of that's true or any of that. But it is something to think about. Sure. What is intelligence? Where does that start? Because babies have intelligence, but they can't talk, they can't reason, they can't respond. Their intelligence has to reach a certain point before they're what we call them independently intelligent. Okay, that's what we do. IQ and all these different things. Okay, the ability to reason is a learned ability. We have the ability within us, but the actual doing of it is learned and trainable. That's what Brother Rosser is doing. He's trying to get these kids to think, reason in the Bible. To be able to defend, to discuss, to debate. The word is argue, but argue doesn't mean what argue means anymore. Or the old school argument, if we are going to have an argument, that means I'm going to present my position and back it up with facts and evidence, and you're going to present your position and back it up with facts and evidence. That was traditionally an argument. It was a very logical, very reasoned out process. There were rules. I mean, there's things you don't do, things you do. Well, you shouldn't be doing that anywhere outside the bathroom anyway. But there's things that are done and things that are not done. And that's a debate. But the little one here isn't going to debate me, probably, yet. But give him a while, okay? So anyway, our society tells us, here's the thing. Our society is telling us, and has for a while, that if we change our actions, our thoughts will change. You understand that? If you go to a rehab program, they're not going to try to change your mind as much as change your action. Is that true, Justin? I mean, you probably have more experience than I do. Yeah, but I mean like AA or most rehab programs. I'm not saying you've been to them, but you're familiar. Probably more than me, but they say do this, get into the habit of doing this, do the 12 steps, do this, and things will change. Now, the proof kind of that really doesn't work is relapse is built into those programs. It is an assumed that you will relapse. There's not a change there. There's a shifting around. But there's no basic change. If things are truly changed, then things will be different. Relapse is still possible, but it's not wired. Now, for a Christian, what God does in our lives, what God I've seen do in Richard's life, and Angelica, and Sonny, and others, and mine, is he has changed. I'm talking to Quinn about some stuff. If you knew me 30 years ago, I'm not the same guy. My personality has changed. So many things about me are just different. And not because I did different things, but because God has reached in and grown me and done things. You know, this right here, this is when we teach these later on, these three here are transformational. That's what we're talking about now. They transform you from the inside out. This God works in my life to teach me what love truly is. And within me now, because he's taught me that, now I have more ability to love properly my wife. It wasn't because I started doing it. It's because he changed me and allows me to do it. Joy. I have never had joy. I was a pretty miserable guy to be around most of my life because I was unhappy. I didn't like myself. Now, in my opinion, I have changed a lot. I feel I have joy. I just do. And it's because God has done that in me. It's not because I practiced having joy. You understand? He gets inside and does things to us. That's what this whole thing is all about. But society says you need to change your things and then your thoughts will change. The Bible says, nay, 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 as Pastor would say. You change your thoughts and then your actions will change and they will stay changed because you've changed the basis on which they're coming from. Proverbs 23:7, for as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Garbage in, garbage out. What you got in your heart is going to be what comes out. Now, we can mask it. We can pretend. What P.T. Barnum say, you can fool all the people some of the time, and you can fool some of the people all the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. Pretty sure that was close. Okay? But with God, he says, if you change what's here, you can change what's out here. James, the book of James used to just drive me crazy when I was a new Christian. I'd read James, and it's talking about the tongue. And it says the tongue is I forget the right words, the wild thing that no man can tame. And a couple of verses later, he says, you need to take care and control your tongue. And I'm like, you just said I couldn't. And then you told me to do it. What? But what I missed was I can't control my tongue. But I can control what comes out of my mouth by what I put in my heart. Because what's in my heart is what's going to come out of my mouth. So if I want to control my tongue, I control my heart. Change my heart, my tongue changes. But it's, you can, what's the right word? You can mask it. You can put on an act. You can speak properly when you're around those people. And you go somewhere else and all this, your language changes. But what's going to happen here one of these days is you're going to slip and forget who you're with. And you're going to say some stuff, and they're going to look at you like, oh, where did that come from? Well, it was always in there. See, because it's not real. But if we change our heart, Proverbs 40, Proverbs 4, 20 through 23 here. Okay, it says, my son, attend unto my word, incline thy ears to my sayings. Let them not depart from thine eyes, his sayings, his laws, commandments. Keep them in the midst of thy heart. For they, commandments, laws, for they are life to those that find them. And that find means I found it and I hid it. I found it and I kept it. Not like, oh, look there it is, and I walk off. I found it and I picked it up and I put it in my heart and I kept it. That's what that word find means. For they are life to those that find them. Where did I lose it? For their life those that find them, and health to all their flesh. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. You ever want to have some fun sometime, if you're built like that, do a word study on the word keep. That is an amazing word. It is. It means so many things. It has such great meaning. Keep, I'm going to keep this. But I keep a garden. That means I protect it, I water it, I take care of it, I think about it, I worry about it, I keep it. It means to build a hedge about it, I protect it. It means to guard. It means so many things. So keep thy heart with all diligence. Diligence is take care of business, dude. This is your job. You do it. For out of it are the issues of life. Out of it. Why did you do that? Because it's in your heart. Why did that person do that? Because it's in their heart. What are Steve Currington's famous words? Before he'd done it, he thunked it. Before you had done it, you thunk it. One of these days. I got him. Okay? And that's so true. You never do anything that you haven't thought about. You never do. Now, sometimes you do kind of random things, but at some point in time, you thunk about it. I love to use the illustration when I was in choir at the old church out in California, stand right up there behind by the baptistry, because that's where the men stood. And so we'd be during, we'd have to be up there singing, or somebody's doing something, and we're just standing there, or even while we're singing sometimes, I would start thinking, I want so bad to just scream as loud as I can and jump into the baptistry. You have no idea. I mean, sometimes I would have to hold on to the chair in front of me because I just really, really, really wanted to. Now, that's not just some random thing. I think about things like that. I need to get back on my meds, I'm just saying. But I do. That's just who I am. But so if I ever did that, it wasn't just this boom thing. It was stuff I thought about. And I gave into it, which I can't do. You shouldn't do. We need to have control. That's what we're talking about. It's control your thoughts. Matthew 12:35. Here it is. Matthew 12:35 and Jeremiah 17:9. The two sides of the coin. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth good things. Where does evil come from? An evil man out of the evil treasures bringeth forth evil things. Jeremiah 17:9. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? And I love the next verse as God says, I know it. I try the reins. I got this, dude. So, well, it's 17:9 and 10. I just did 9 here. But you shouldn't stop at 9. It sounds horrible. Our heart's wicked and desperately deceitful. Who can know it? God says, dude, I got this. He can call us dude if he wants to, right? He says, don't worry about that. He says, Bill, it's not such a bad, your heart is desperately wicked and deceitful. I get that, but you know what? God says, I can control that heart. Amen. If you'll let me. If you just let me, if you'll take in my commandments, my law, my words, and write them on the tables of your heart, bind them about your heart, keep them in your heart, all the words that he uses, lock them into your heart. Meditate on this day and night. Teach it to your children when they rise, when they go to bed. Ingrain them in your heart. Then, out of the good heart, out of the good treasure, will come good things. Now, our heart's still wicked and desperate and deceitful, our natural heart. But we got to starve that heart. So, as a maturing Christian, our next step after dedicating our bodies to God, after giving our body, is to give our minds, our thoughts. And it's a process. It takes some time. It's rough because we like our thoughts, because they're our thoughts, and we think them, and we just enjoy them because that's why we think them. Right. And we need to change those thoughts. How do you change them? God tells us. Our actions come from our heart. To change our actions, we have to change what's in our heart. If we act, if we respond from our natural heart, we're going to have wicked results. Matthew 7:21-23. For from within, out of the heart of men, perceive evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, theft, covetousness. I don't know what the hand gestures are, but it's really fun. Wickedness, deceit, lasciviousness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. All these evil come from within to defile the man. So that sounds to me pretty depressing. Like, I might as well just give up right there because that's what's in my heart. Right? That's what it says. But God says, that's okay. I know your heart. I can change that. You can't, but he says, I can. Let me. But the deal is that let is what holds us up. If we don't let him, he can't do it. We have to invite him in all the time. God doesn't go where he's not invited. And if we don't invite him into our heart, and I'm not talking about salvation. I'm talking about when you get up tomorrow morning. I'm talking about when you stand up today. When you get out in your car, you have to constantly be inviting him in. God, teach me. God, show me. Help me to hear. Help me to hear. Help me to hear. Help me to hear. Let me learn. Help me to learn. I got to put away my stuff. I want your stuff. We have to invite. And the more we do that, then the good man out of the good treasure of the heart. See, it's there, but it doesn't control us. Not after salvation, it doesn't. Because we're a new creature. But we got to grow that dude. We have to grow. We have to mature. Not just our body, but now our thoughts. First to do the things that we please the Lord, we have to put his things into our heart. We have to give up our own wisdom. We have to think right. And now here's what's wrong with our wisdom. Does man have wisdom? Yeah. Absolutely. Man has wisdom. It's limited. And it's not God's wisdom. But there are wise men, and there's foolish men that are lost. Okay, so man has wisdom. The problem is we have to give up our wisdom. And that's really hard to do because we're very proud of our wisdom. I worked hard to get that wisdom. I went to college, I went to the university, I learned, I thought, I learned to reason. I know things. What do you mean, give that up? God says, do it, give it up. I got something much better. So there's two things wrong with our wisdom. First, our wisdom, our personal wisdom, is very short-sighted. Isaiah 55:9. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways, God's ways, higher than your ways. And my thoughts, God, my thoughts than your thoughts. God's thoughts are like, they're not even describable. Our thoughts are definable. We can define the wisdom of man. It's there. It's written down. It's in a book. It has limits. It's finite. And a lot of it's wrong. Not all of it. Isaac Newton, the law of gravity. It works. He's describing God's creation. But he smart guy. When I'm teaching my students, I'm like, how did this guy Kepler come up with the 3 laws of planetary motion? No computers, no calculators, no science books, no teaching. He just looked out there and he figured it out. These mathematical laws that are just absolutely true. I'm like, that blows my mind. It truly, I can't even conceive the thought process to be able to do that. And God looks at it and said, I made that. I wrote that law. You just read it. I wrote it. I put the planets in place. Right. I thought of the law, and then I put them in there, and they follow my law, dude. You just figured it out, but that doesn't mean you're that smart, because I did it. Okay, and so our wisdom is very short-sighted. A perfect example of this is this. Probably a simplistic example. So in here, we need somebody, so I need a group leader. Men, ladies, teens, whatever. So I look around, and in my great wisdom, I choose somebody I think would make a good group leader. Now, y'all understand, I have the ability to do that. I don't have to ask anybody. I just can do that. Pastor's given me that freedom. But I never use that freedom. I always go to him and say, Preacher, I'm thinking about making this person a group leader. What do you think? And most of the time, he's like, good, I like it. Let's push this person. And a couple of times he says, no. Either no or not now. He's only said that a couple of times. And why? Because he knows things I don't know. And that's where God is. That's just a very simplistic example. God knows everything. I just know little things. So my man's wisdom is very short-sighted. We've got to understand that. The second thing is man's wisdom is, this is a really good statement. It's man's wisdom. It's not God's wisdom. That's a problem. It's our way, not God's way. And by definition, there is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof ain't good. That's in the Allen version of the Bible there. Okay? Proverbs 14:12, there's a way, which I just said. And God's saying, wait. Dude, that's fine, but go my way. Because you just don't know. We try to, and what we do is this. We decide what's right. Now, I gotta believe I'm not the only person that's ever done this, but I decide a course of action. I say, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And I say, okay, God, I'm going to do this. And he says, not what I want you to do. And you start doing what? You start arguing with him. You defend yourself. But no, wait, because listen to me this. You try to justify it. Oh, I know it's the right way because. You say, and which is, God's not interested in that. He was not impressed with Adam and Eve when they done wrong. And he said, what's going on? And they started to say, well, it wasn't my fault, it was their fault. And it was their fault. Oh, they did that. And he's like, he just listened. And he said, all right, no, you're wrong. And there was no arguing with that. You can justify and defend and all that stuff, but we ain't never going to win that conversation with God. Okay? And it's just not right. And here's the thing. What we say that we're doing is right. We say we're doing something right. And we might be doing right. But what we're missing is it's not the action that's right or wrong. It's not the action that's right. It's the motivation behind the action that makes it wrong because it's not from God. It's not that what you're doing is wrong. It's the reason you're doing it is not right. That's the problem. And that's where we get this thing sideways because, well, I'm doing this and it doesn't say in the Bible I can't do that. And God's like, you're right. But who told you to do that? Well, I did. And he says, that's the problem. I didn't. Okay? And we can't go that. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, kind of my life verses. Trust in the Lord with all thy heart. Lean not into thine own understanding. In all thy ways, acknowledge him. That means to ask and obey. That's like a Navy thing. Aye, aye, sir. And he shall direct thy paths. If we don't let God direct our path, then, see, this is black and white. If we don't let God direct our path, then we are directing our path. There's nothing else. There's no middle ground there. It's either we're letting God do it, and if we're not, then we are. And it's wrong. That's just how it is. The things we're doing may not be wrong in themselves, but they're not taking us on the path that God wanted. If God wants me to walk this path, if I walk anywhere besides this path, it's not right. It doesn't mean I'm like, killing babies and murdering and raping men and all this stuff. It doesn't mean that. I'm not out pillaging and destroying the world. I may be going into the hospitals and helping people and giving money and going around the world and feeding babies and rescuing dogs and helping old ladies across the street. And it's not what God wanted me to do, so it's not right. Not the actions, the motivation. We've got to get this. Because we can't be, otherwise we're just justifying ourselves. All right, I'm going to go through this example real quick. It's going to take me a couple minutes over, but not much. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. I keep seeing 55, and I was like, no, that's when I was born. 1995. I took this backwards with my wife. So 1995, I was working in a restaurant and going to a church, Pleasant Valley Baptist Church. I was just attending there, and they put on this amazing camp every year, teen camp. Hundreds and hundreds of teens, juniors, just this big, big production. We'd go in there a couple, 3, 4 days the week before, and we'd build stuff. And then when it's over, we'd spend a day or two taking it all apart and shipping it all out. Camp just let us use their facilities. So I was volunteering. So the theme that year was California, make the waves, don't ride the waves. And anyway, so we took this auditorium about twice, 3 times this size, and we filled it with 6 inches of beach sand and dump truck fulls. because the waves, the beach and stuff. And then we had service in there. We had surfboards. I made surfboards out of 2x12s. It was great. Just all this cool stuff. All the sea, everything. So at the end, we had to take all the sand out. We put it on tarps and stuff. We didn't ruin the floor. It's hardwood floor. And you put big tarps down. So we're working, and we're taking the sand, putting wheelbarrows, and you take it down the step and then down a board, over here. And they wanted the sand because they had so they just took it and they put it in their dump trucks and took it all over the place. But we had to get it out. So we're sitting there working, hours and hours. It was a couple hours. And at one point, we took a break, and we're standing out there in the front steps, because we're just taking a break, drinking a beer, no, having some water, soda, whatever. And we're talking. And the pastor was saying something along the lines of, he said, I'd really like to buy this place. Just buy it. And we would put on the camps for all these people. We would come up with the games. We'd feed them. We'd house them. We'd clean up. We would run the camp. He said, I don't know anybody do that. And I just said, I would. You buy this camp, I'll come up here and run it. I know how. I can do the maintenance. I can build things. Food. I can take care of the kitchen. I could run this camp. And I would love that. And I'm just shooting. I'm just talking. I'm not, it's just a conversation. You've had those before. And he turns around and looks at me, and I was like, it's kind of weird. And he says, you'd work for me? And I'm just messing around still. And I said, well, sure. And he says, how much notice do you have to give to your job? And I'm like, 2 weeks? He says, good, do it. I expect you in 2 weeks. And I'm like, you could have knocked me over with nothing. I was like, what just happened here? I just quit my job and got another job that I have never thought about in my life. I'm not qualified for. I'm like, what am I going to do? He said, you're going to teach in our school. I said, teach what? He said, well, you took a lot of math and science and stuff in college, right? I said, yeah. You'll teach math and science. I said, I have never been, not taken one teaching class in my life. I don't like teenagers. I mean, I don't know anything about it. It doesn't matter. Put your notice in. You told me you would. 2 weeks, you show up. And I did. Now watch this. That's not me. But I want you to hear this. I didn't know he was serious. God had a plan for me that I never even in my wildest LSD dreams, never, not even thought about, not even in passing a little bit, never, I mean zero. I could see a lot of things, but that was not one of them. And in that moment, God just said, Alan, do this. And I didn't really know, but he did. And I don't, that's not me. I am not an impulse person like that. I know. And I said yes. And here I am. If I had not said yes, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things if I'd not gone to the camp, if I'd not worked, if I'd not gotten to conversation. But if I had just said, you're out of your mind, which would be my normal answer, I don't think I'd be here. Now, maybe God would have done it another way, but do you understand? There's turning points in our lives sometimes. And this thing about our thoughts, we've got to be willing to just say, yes, sir, at some point, and just say, I don't understand, I don't get it, makes absolutely no sense to me, but yes, sir, and trust and go. Because watch this, that is the greatest decision of my life outside of my marriage, I think, because I'm here. And God has changed me from that moment on more than he ever changed me up to that moment. And there's still a lot of work to do, but I'm just saying. I got to stop. I have to stop. But I think about Saul. I got to put this in here. Saul's a man to me. Saul, the King Saul. When God made him king, God expected him to be king for a long time, to take Israel to heights it had never reached before. And then at some point out there in the future, I think God's plan was for David to come in there. Saul blew it. He refused to follow God's plan. So God said, man, I hate that for you. All right, David, your turn. See, God's plan wasn't disturbed. Christ still was born in Bethlehem, in the lineage of David. But I believe with all my heart, God didn't bring Saul on the scene for him to mess up. He did it for him. Saul blew it. He took the wrong turn. Watch this. If you're faced with a turn, just take the right turn. Because you never know exactly when that turn change your life forever. But we've got to be willing to say yes when he says something to us. All right, I'll stop there for sure.